Hello, I'm Chris Fowler for Sports Century. His was the face of menace. He wore a malevolent scowl that paralyzed opponents with fear. He had sledgehammer fists and a left jab like the pistons on a locomotive. He also had an assassin's instinct for finishing off a man. Yet in the end, Charles Sonny Liston was revealed as nothing more than a bully, done in, apparently, by his insatiable appetite for things destructive and dangerous.
Sonny Liston, the former heavyweight boxing champion, was found dead last night in his Las Vegas home by his wife. He was 38. He had been dead for at least a week. An autopsy failed to show the cause of death, and further studies will be made.
It's the 5th of January, 1971, and she goes home and sees the papers hadn't been picked up, sees the lights on all over the house, the door is open.
And I goes up the step, and the house had a terrible smell. And I went in the kitchen, and I didn't see anything.
She goes up the stairs, the odor gets more pungent. She looks into the bedroom door and sees Liston lying at the end of the bed, his head canted to one side, and she can see immediately that he's dead.
Liston's death is surrounded in mystery. No one knows to this day what happened.
He was such a shady guy and had so many shady kinds of associations and relationships that suspicion literally pursues him beyond the grave.
It's possible that he was murdered because he was muscling in on somebody's drug business. It's possible that in a fit of manic depression, he killed himself. And it's probably most likely that he screwed up with a speedball and inadvertently overdosed.
He supposedly made threats that he was going to blow the whistle on a lot of things that happened to him in the past if he didn't get so much money. Not so supposedly, he wound up dead.
So ended one of the most tragic downfalls in boxing history. Less than a decade earlier, Sonny Liston, known respectfully as the Bear, dominated boxing's heavyweight division as if it were his own private forest. With no serious challengers, he agreed to defend his crown in 1964 against a 22-year-old upstart believed to have more mouth than fight.
I'm tired of waiting for this fight. I'm nervous. He's got my job. I'm the champ.
When he's getting ready to fight Liston, he drives his bus onto the front lawn at Liston's house in Denver. Come on out here and fight. I'll fight you now, you big ugly bear.
Tell him, what are we going to do? You're going to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Ah!
Sonny Liston was a bully. The one group of people who were not afraid of Liston, and who Liston was actually a little afraid of, were the crazy people.
If Sonny Liston even dreamed he beat me, he'd apologize. He's too ugly to be the world champ. The world champ should be pretty like me.
It didn't make him doubt himself so much as he think, I'm going to get in the ring with a crazy guy. Who the hell knows what he's going to do?
Clay comes out to meet Liston, and Liston starts to retreat. If Liston goes back an inch further, he'll end up in the ringside seat.
Clay went at him hammer and tongs, never let up. It was all an act, but Sonny bought it.
Don't you have any respect for him at all, as a fighter?
As a fighter, I think he should be locked up for impersonating a fighter.
For all his pre-fight mayhem, Clay, undefeated in 19 bouts, was no impersonator. But Liston didn't just win, he devastated, knocking out 25 of his 36 opponents. The contrast between them couldn't have been sharper. Clay was the exuberant exhibitionist, Liston the silent enforcer.
Not too many guys you watch jumping rope that make you nervous. This is a bad man.
When you got hit by Sonny Liston's jab, it felt like you were getting hit with a telephone pole.
Possibly the greatest left jab in the history of the heavyweight division. That left jab could go through brick walls.
It was like learning that another country had the atom bomb and they were coming at you. He seemed invincible.
He was this devastating, hulking figure who was just beating opponents, knocking them out.
This wasn't going to be any fight at all. He was going to spank this baby.
He trained for maybe a 4-round fight, which is about how long he thought it would take him to dispose of this young upstart.
I thought Sonny Liston was going to be champion for 147 years. This guy could knock you out with a jab.
My assignment was to get in my rental car and go back and forth between the arena and the nearest hospital emergency room, so I would not waste a moment of deadline time following Cassius Clay into intensive care.
Of the 46 writers covering the fight, only 3 picked Clay to win. Fight fans across all social strata agreed.
A lot of people in the black community who at this point kind of would think it Clay's a clown, so I'd rather see Liston win.
The press wanted Sonny to beat the loudmouth from Louisville. They didn't like Clay at all.
Dislike turned into distrust when news reports revealed Clay's association with Malcolm X of the Nation of Islam. Although the fight's promoters prevailed upon the high-profile leader to leave Clay's camp, the pre-fight atmosphere was negatively charged with skepticism and fear. Meanwhile, Liston's underworld connections were leading some fans to suspect he might throw the bout. On February 25th, the fighters squared off before an undersold crowd in Miami Beach.
Liston wants to pump that jab to set up his other punches. If he can get this kid to stand still.
His speed was so predominant over Liston. He made Liston look like he was standing still, and Liston wasn't that slow.
Liston is beginning to question what's going on here. Nobody told me this guy was this fast.
Sonny wobbled! Sonny wobbled! Cassius has him hurt!
Now Clay realizes I'm faster than this guy. Liston's corner decides to put ointment on his gloves and his shoulder. It is possible, with the intention of getting it in Clay's eyes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't know exactly what happened. They're yelling from Cassius Clay's corner. Something got in his right eye.
When he came back and he says, cut the gloves off, I said, sit down. Put my pinky in his eye and put it in my eye. It did burn. I put the water in his eyes. I'm wiping him clean.
That's Angelo Dundee that he was arguing with, Joe. Angelo now is telling him off a little bit while he gets him ready.
Dundee says, this is for the championship, kid. You are going out there.
He's blinking and he's bouncing away continually.
Liston is trying to knock him out. He's trying to get to a blind Cassius Clay, and he can't do it. And Liston, by that round, is already exhausted.
And Clay pulled the greatest escape act since Houdini. He survived that 5th round, and then in round 6, his vision cleared, and Liston found himself on the defensive.
The champion has slowed down a bit.
His face was just knots all up and down and cut. One eye was nearly closed. I mean, he was the picture of defeat.
After the fight, everyone who would pick Sonny all had to have a reason why Sonny lost. And the first reason they gave was fix. It had to be a fix. They just didn't want to admit Clay had won the fight.
From the depths of his humiliation, Liston could not accept responsibility for his loss, blaming it on a shoulder injury.
And I went back to my corner. The whole glove felt like it was full of water.
His arm was just aching, and I was the one that was rubbing it with wintergreen and alcohol.
They took him to the hospital, and there never was a valid report on what had happened to that particular shoulder.
Don't give up the heavyweight championship of the world, the single most valuable prize in all of sports, because your shoulder hurts.
His one weakness as a fighter was his lack of heart. Once you take his gun away, he turned into a sissy.
Harold Conrad had been his publicist for years. It said about Liston, he died the day he was born. And it's a little harsh, but in a way it's true.
There was a time when he proudly brandished a birth certificate proving that he was born in January 1932. His mother has named 2 or 3 different dates. She can remember it being the middle of January, a cold night. And then a couple of years later, she said, oh, it was July.
In whatever month or season, Charles Sonny Liston was born in a tenant shack outside Forest City, Arkansas. The 24th of 25 children claimed to have been sired by his father, Toby, and one of 11 to his mother, Helen. His early years were hard-bitten, hungry, and violent.
His father beat him every day. either for doing something or just for something to do.
When Johnny Taco first saw him take off his shirt, he looked at his back and he saw bird tracks up and down his back. And he said, "What are all those marks?" And he said, "I had bad dealings with my father."
Sonny would help his father do his work rather than go to school, which accounts for his comparatively poor education.
In 1946, Helen Liston decided she'd had enough and escaped to St. Louis, leaving Sonny in the unloving hands of his father. Isolated and confused, he left the farm and went in search of his mother.
He had no sense of self. He had no feelings of identity. He had nothing to attach himself to.
He turned up in St. Louis expecting the first person he asked would know where his mother was.